Oslo, 1969. A small team of geologists out in the North Sea hit the jackpot. Oil, black, gold, the kind of discovery that takes a quiet, Scandinavian country and turns it into one of the richest nations on Earth. In just a few decades, Norway would transform from a land of fishermen and farmers into the poster child for prosperity. Today, it's ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world. A modern utopia where everyone drives Teslas, prisons look like IKEA showrooms, and the government is sitting on $1 trillion savings account. But every utopia has shadows. Norway's smiling exterior hides a darker history. Nazi collaborators, oppressed minorities, far-right terrorists, and an economy that preaches green values while secretly guzzling oil money. This is the dark side of Norway. For most of its history, Norway wasn't wealthy. It was poor, rural, and overshadowed by Denmark and Sweden. Generations of Norwegians packed up and left for America because life back home was, frankly, miserable. Then came 1969. Oil fields in the North Sea changed everything. Suddenly, Norway was filthy rich. But instead of blowing it all on yachts and golden toilets, the government did something smart. They created the oil fund. Today, worth over $1.5 trillion. That's enough to make every Norwegian a millionaire on paper. Sounds perfect, right? The dark side is that all this wealth comes from fossil fuels. At home, Norway runs on clean hydropower, electric cars, and climate-friendly policies. Abroad, they're one of the world's top exporters of oil and gas. Norway basically tells the world, we're green, but don't forget to fill up its shell on your way out. It's like selling cigarettes while bragging you've quit smoking. And here's the kicker. Norway isn't just rich because of oil. It's addicted to it. Without the constant flow of petrodollars, the famous welfare state would shrink faster than daylight in December, and the oil riches don't erase inequality. Oslo glitters with waterfront skyscrapers and designer boutiques, but rural Norway often feels left behind. Housing prices are absurd. Immigrants, in particular, often don't share in the prosperity. The wealth gap is smaller than in most countries. Sure, but when you live in a so-called utopia, being poor feels even worse. Even the oil company Statoil, now Equinor, got caught in bribery scandals from Iran to Libya. Billions were lost in shady overseas deals. For a country that loves preaching about transparency, Norway has its fair share of skeletons, probably hidden in very expensive, minimalist closets. But let's rewind. Norway's dark side didn't start with oil. During World War II, Norway was invaded and occupied by Nazi Germany. Resistance fighters were brave, but many Norwegians collaborated. The most infamous was Vidkun Quisling, who basically handed the country to Hitler on a silver platter. His name became a synonym for traitor around the world. That's one way to leave a legacy. After the war, Norway didn't exactly redeem itself with kindness. The indigenous people in the north faced forced assimilation. Kids were banned from speaking their own language at school. Their culture was suppressed in the name of modernization. Only in recent decades has Norway begun to apologize. And nothing says sorry like waiting 100 years before you say it. Other groups suffered too. The Roma people were marginalized. Forced sterilizations were carried out against minorities and people deemed unfit in the mid-20th century. For a country that today lectures the world about human rights, Norway has its own skeletons in the closet, and some of them are still rattling. And here's a darker irony. While Norway loves celebrating Viking heritage, the same culture that's sold as tourist-friendly history is rooted in centuries of violence, raiding, and slavery. Norwegians today wear horned helmets at festivals, but their ancestors weren't so cute about it. Heritage often means blood. Fast forward to July 22, 2011. Norway is shaken by the deadliest attack in its modern history. Anders Behring Breivik sets off a bomb in Oslo's government quarter, then heads to Utøya Island, where a youth political camp is underway. He hunts down teenagers one by one. 77 people are killed. Breivik wasn't a foreign terrorist, he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian. His ideology, far-right extremism, xenophobia, hatred of immigrants. Norway, the land of Nobel Peace Prizes and cozy Christmas sweaters, discovered that extremism could grow right at home. And Breivik's warped ideas still echo in extremist forums today. Norway's darkest day wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. And what about his punishment? 21 years in prison. Technically extendable, yes, but still, 21 years for 77 lives. Norway's justice system is famously humane. To outsiders, it feels less like punishment and more like a really grim Airbnb. His prison cell has a desk, a TV, even a PlayStation. Breivik once complained that his console was outdated. Imagine being a mass murderer and your biggest problem is not having Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 2. Norway believes in rehabilitation. Admirable in theory, terrifying in practice. Immigration remains one of the country's biggest divides. While Norway has welcomed refugees and migrants, integration has been messy. Immigrant communities face higher unemployment, discrimination, and often become political scapegoats. The far-right Progress Party has gained real power by stoking fears about foreigners. For a country that prides itself on equality, Norway's politics can get ugly fast. And don't be fooled by the world's happiest country rankings. Sure, Norwegians are rich, healthy, and live in stunning fjords, but suicide rates, especially among young men, and they are higher than most realize. Alcoholism lurks under the surface. Winters are long, dark, and isolating. Happiness, it turns out, isn't evenly distributed. Even paradise gets seasonal depression, and mental health issues here are often masked by silence. Norwegians joke about the weather, about the darkness, but behind that humor sits a culture that sometimes struggles to talk about pain openly. Happiness is measured by surveys. Misery often hides behind closed doors. Then there's crime. Norway's prisons are world famous for being humane. Inmates get private rooms, flat-screen TVs, and access to nature. It looks more like a college dorm than a prison. But the dark side is that victims sometimes feel justice is too lenient. Repeat offenders walk free faster than you can say rehabilitation. Organized crime, rising. Oslo has seen an uptick in gang violence and drug networks. Norway consistently ranks near the top in Europe for overdose deaths. Behind the polished welfare system, addiction quietly destroys lives. And despite the oil money, Norway hasn't solved everything. Infrastructure projects go over budget. Politicians get caught in corruption scandals. And housing, young Norwegians joke that buying a home in Oslo requires either winning the lottery or marrying someone rich. Even the oil fund, Norway's pride and joy, has cracks. In 2008, it lost tens of billions in the financial crisis. Bad investments in fossil fuels and struggling companies have raised doubts about its future. The whole thing depends on continued oil demand. If the world really moves away from fossil fuels, Norway's golden goose may not lay forever. Which raises the awkward question: what happens when a country built on oil runs out of oil? Or the world just stops buying it? So far, Norway's answer is, don't ask that. And let's talk about the environment. Norway loves to scold the rest of the world about emissions while quietly bankrolling its economy with oil exports. They push electric cars at home, but fund drilling projects abroad. It's like telling everyone else to quit smoking while running the world's biggest tobacco shop. Meanwhile, Norway's pristine wilderness hides other scars. The whaling industry still operates. Yes, in 2025, Norway continues hunting whales, defying international bans. A country that preaches sustainability is still out there harpooning animals most of the world sees as endangered. Nothing says eco-friendly like serving whale steak with a side of hypocrisy. So yes, Norway is wealthy, safe, and stable. But the dark side includes Nazi collaborators, suppressed indigenous cultures, far-right terrorism, skyrocketing housing prices, drug deaths, whale hunts, and an oil addiction dressed up as climate leadership. The land of the midnight sun looks like a utopia, but every utopia has its shadows. Norway's story is proof that even the happiest country in the world has skeletons. Some in its past, some in its present, and some it's still actively drilling out of the ground. But hey, at least the fjords are beautiful, the salmon is fresh, and if you ever go to prison, the Wi-Fi is probably better than yours at home. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more stories of countries that look perfect on postcards, but hide much darker truths behind the smile.